Hey, what's up? Good evening, our Friday Night Fire fans. It's Friday night, and it's time for another Friday Night Fire with my friend here on my left, Mr. Matt Koenig, and myself, Mike Phillips. So we're going to get into tonight some fun subjects. We're going to talk about disagreement, hence the little sign here behind me. Why we have that? That's how do you get along with people when you're having a disagreement, when people see things from a different perspective.
I don't agree with you, Mike, right now.
And that's fine. You don't have to. But we're going to keep going and get into our intro. So, as you know, for the people that are tuning in, first things first, we would love if you would share the show out. That would be awesome because we want to make an impact and we want to share this message with as many people as are able to hear it. So share the show. Make sure you subscribe to either my YouTube channel or search for Matt Koenig on the YouTube and he will come up. And we're going to get into talking about some motivation, inspiration, faith-based foundation because we always base it in faith and have a lot of conversation for the next hour. So with that, Matt, how are you this week, man? It's been a crazy and eventful week.
So the truth is mostly okay. We had our company in India had a product launch and we had to pause it, which is actually a great thing. We're launching this new tool, LiveNar, which is going to put this Restream tool in the dirt, and it won't be glitchy or sketchy. But all these cool features were there, and when we moved it to the live server, the developers are awesome, and they were like, hey, we're going to add these couple extra cool features. And when they did, that crashed everything. So we actually pulled it for the week, and now they added even sweeter features. So I'm excited because that gets to launch Monday. But that was a little rough start to the week. Then, the election stuff has just been crazy for everybody, right? So it's nutso. So aside from all that craziness, dude, my wife and children are healthy. I am healthy. Praise God. Good thing, actually. Early Monday. Okay. So we talked about I had the blood clot in September in my lung.
Yeah.
So I had to go in for like an ultrasound for them to check like both of my legs to see, was this a one-time deal or, is there something going on in there? And God is good. We prayed about it, before going like, all right, God, please let this be not a recurring theme. And
right.
And I was having some like weird cramping. Turns out it's just not enough water. So yay, all the ultrasound show, 0 blood clots. And that is God is awesome. And so you know what? So instead of a pretty okay week, I lied. It's been freaking wonderful, dude.
That is wonderful.
It's awesome.
It's it's funny how we weigh things. Because when you come in and like even now, I watched you transform through that gratitude that it's like, hey, wait a minute, actually things are pretty awesome. But we put a lot of weight in some of those small things and some of those difficulties.
Plus we tend to focus, like it's kind of like I said before, like there's so much good around us that when there's something negative going on, it kind of grabs our attention, right?
Sure.
And so in the midst of all the good, like it's easy to focus on that. It's actually literally my book that I'm writing right now is all about this life change. And so you hit it on the head, dude. Like the moment I focused on what was important, which is the good things God is doing, like, oh yeah, immediately, like my life is good. Actually, it's awesome.
Yeah.
How are you doing this week?
I like you. When I think about all of the good things in my life, it's really good. Like things are good in the day job. Things are going well at the dealership. My wife is amazing. My kids are amazing. We got an offer. My daughter competed last Saturday in her first gymnastics meet of the year, which normally by this time they've had several, but we've had an eventful 2020. So it was her first opportunity to compete at a new level. Like anything else, it changed. Like we got there, and they're young kids, right? So when they got there, it was like, hey, we're not going to need masks and stuff because they're a younger age group. Parents will have to wear. Well, then all of a sudden they're like in line to actually compete. And it was, oh, hey, by the way, we need masks. So parents are scrambling to get the kid masks and all that kind of stuff. And you can imagine, 8, 9, 10-year-old girls are like all of a sudden, well, it kind of threw their mojo off. But everybody made it through it and it was good. And my daughter did well, and she was super nervous. I shared on my Monday podcast about how, it's the same things that God speaks to us as we get older and wiser, so to speak, is kind of the same things we speak to our kids as parents, like a loving father, like, hey, you're going to be okay. Things are going to work out. Here's what you focus on. And oftentimes we think, well, our kids aren't listening. No, they're listening, just like we're listening to God. It's whether we're going to actually take that advice or not. That was how I associated it. So, all in all, it's been a good week. It's been a busy week, so it can get a little stressful. And then you add on just the close to 2020, because here in the U.S. we are going through a lengthy election process, and so I think that's one of the reasons that you and I talked about, and that we wanted to share with our viewers and our podcast listeners of this specific episode, which is, how to win with people or dealing with people you disagree with, and still being able to win, and not like win the argument, but to create wins for both sides of the view. So I guess, so to speak. So
I feel you. I'm picking up what you're putting down, Mike.
Are you?
I am.
Up? So, well, here's the thing. I actually have notes for tonight's show, so I'm going to read a little bit off of this. So I said, hey, look, if you're like me, and many people are, like, innately humans don't like conflict. We don't relish disagreement, right? We experience conflict, and we have misunderstandings and frustrations, often just because of poor communication. Like, we don't communicate well. We say and we communicate in a manner which is relevant to us. But the reality is communication. I think it was Ronald Reagan, while we're on the presidency thing.
I love Ronald Reagan.
I love Ronald Reagan, my favorite president. I think it was him that shared, he says, listen, the value of communication, and Tony Robbins has repeated this, the value of communication, because Ronald Reagan was the great communicator, the value of communication is not in what you think you're saying, but how the person receiving it hears it. And so,
that's kind of like saying the power isn't with the voter; it's with the vote counter.
Not exactly the same.
It's the person receiving.
It's the person receiving. So, kind of closing to this thought,
I couldn't help it.
You couldn't help it. So during this time, because it is a stressful time, it's been a stressful year. We're into month 11 of 12 months of 2020. And it feels like longer than that for some. And people are experiencing stress and anxiety and frustration. And so we have this need to express ourselves. Well, so does everybody else. And so I think it's important that during these times, we do refer back to verses in the Bible that maybe deal with conflict, that remind us of kindness, that remind us to pray and lean on God rather than leaning on the flawed ideas and opinions of other people. So, kind of the last thing that I'm thinking here is, one of the things is when we respond to a disagreement or we respond to a conflict, that can either take us down a path to a healthy resolution, or it can take us down a path to destruction of relationships or long-term strife and frustration, if that makes sense. So I think oftentimes too, for those of us, gotta make an adjustment there on my stuff. For those of us that do refer to ourselves as Christians, I think we hold ourselves to a high standard when it comes to disagreements and conflict resolution. And I think from the outside, people say, well, that person's a Christian, or they should or shouldn't think that way. Well, we're all still human. We still all have to process through that conflict and those disagreements. So, we're all flawed. Like, I still have real emotions and feelings. And when things go wrong, what's the first thing, like any other human, you want to soak back into, like, how's that affect me and my heart, rather than really looking objectively. So that's where I'm thinking tonight as we get started. Hey, Larry, good to see you, man.
What up, Larry? And hello to the other 6 people that it's showing that are watching. I know it takes into account
9 now, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think, dude, I think everything you said is really wise. Like, it's funny as we look at this is the perfect week to have this dialogue, right? A lot of folks are disagreeing, a lot of folks are wrestling with stuff. I got to tell you, I get really convicted when it comes to this and digging in on this because I think selectively we extend grace more based on whether or not we like people, right? I mean,
100%.
Right? Like my wife and I were walking earlier, and we were just talking about someone, and that we just have conflict with, right? And it's funny where if I were having a disagreement with you, Michael Phillips, my good friend Michael,
we disagreed at the very beginning of this.
That's true.
And I disagree with you for disagreeing.
Well, all I want to do is say, hello, Michael, like Lost Boys. For some reason, that was in my head before the show. But like, if we had a disagreement because I like you, and I think it goes back to knowing the heart of the person you disagree with. It's very easy to get angry with people that we know have ill intentions because we know them, or with people that we do not know. It's easier to assume ill intention, right? So it makes it a lot more work to quote unquote get along, to be a peacemaker, right? But as looking at the show, and it's funny because I said to Dara, she was getting ready to make coffee, and I go, wait, is today Friday? And she goes, yeah. And I go, crap, I got Friday Night Fire in 33 minutes. We were literally out on a walk and had just gotten home because my brain wasn't focusing. But there were some really important things that I wanted to like throw out to you and everybody watching on the show tonight, biblically, because I think all of this, when people hear us say, well, this isn't a, the stuff going on right now isn't a Republican or Democrat issue, it's a spiritual issue, or it's not a Antifa and Black Lives Matter versus a Proud Boys issue, it's a spiritual issue. And a lot of people sometimes will be like, oh, come on, man, you Bible thumpers, like everything's not a spiritual issue, blah, blah, blah. And people sometimes like get frustrated when somebody says, if we just follow Jesus, we won't have these problems, right? But let me just point to Genesis chapter 1, because I think it starts the story pretty well.
In the beginning.
Not that part, but yes.
No,
but yes. So in Genesis chapter 1, when God, finally creates people, right?
Sure.
And I like reading from the Message. For those of you that go, that's not what my Bible says. It says the same thing. This is just worded in the context of paragraphs rather than pick a verse. And I just think it's beautifully written, like poetry. But it says in Genesis chapter 1, this is between verses 26 and 28, it says, God created human beings. He created them God-like, reflecting God's nature. He created them male and female. God blessed them. Prosper, reproduce, fill the earth, take charge, be responsible for the fish in the sea and the birds in the air, and for every living thing that moves on the face of the earth. And then God goes on and says, I've given you. And those are strong words. He didn't say, you've bought, you've earned. He said, I've given you every sort of seed-bearing plant on earth and every kind of fruit-bearing tree, given them to you for food. To all the animals, all the birds, everything that moves and breathes, I give you whatever grows out of the ground for food. And there it was. And then it ends like this. God looked over everything he made. It was so good, so very good. Now, to go from God saying, from the Bible saying, God created human beings, he created them God, like reflecting God's nature. And then to end it by saying, it was so good. Just whether you're a believer in the Bible or not, if you're watching this, let me ask you this. Is fighting one another good? Is that so good? Well, if not, then immediately we're not living as a reflection of God. We're not living as we were created to. And I think that's where all of this stems from. Anytime we get into these, and I get into them too. So this isn't me talking at you. This is me relating with you.
Sure.
Anytime we behave that way, when we go blow someone up on social media, when someone goes and calls us out because they're just a jerk, when we get so mad that we just say, I want to punch you in the face, The truth is,
but Matt, you're a Christian. You're not supposed to want to punch people in the face.
Yeah, but the reality is I do. Like there are people that I feel that inside, but the reality is we have to also know when we're thinking that. Like it's okay to get righteous anger, right? To be angry about something is okay.
Sure.
But to want to go cause harm, to want to go cause hurt, to want to go out there and blast somebody on social and treat them like crap, or to do any of that stuff, we are 100% not living in the spirit that God created us in. I mean, that's true. Like I have to own that myself too. So in the beginning, we're created in reflecting God's nature. And then he said, this is so good. And then what do? We don't behave like that. So by default, if he were talking, he would probably say, this is no good. Not so good. Right. So I mean, that's reality. So I figured, let's start there because everything's going to stem from the beginning of the story and go back to the fact that we're not living in the nature we were called to live in. And then you fast forward time, and how does Jesus tell us to live, right? Love God, love each other. Well, is it loving to be like, you voted for Joe Biden, so you're a dick? Or you voted for Donald Trump, so you're a dick? None of that's loving. None of that's wearing, the gratefulness for what Jesus did for us. We're just basically saying, hey, because what you taught and learned shaped your beliefs this way, and what I was taught and learned shaped mine this way, I'm just not going to be an adult and love you. I'm not going to be a Christ follower and love you. I'm going to treat you like a turd. And that's, not only is it biblically out of line, it's just not cool.
Well, no, and that right there,
my favorite episode. Yeah, we're talking in tongues for those of you that don't know what that is. I'm just kidding. That is not what has happened.
It's just me not being able to speak.
So like speaking in the tongues of angels, but if he has not love.
So I totally lost where I was at. All right, good show. Thanks. Yeah, hey, so no, we're kidding. We're kidding. Stay here. Hey, so the thing is, it puts us in a position where we're serving ourselves and our beliefs rather than just the teachings of Jesus. It comes down to, well, I'm listening to the teachings of somebody else. I'm listening to somebody else's opinion. And like you're bringing up the politics of it, like the Biden or Trump or Trump or Biden.
For everybody right now, right?
Well, and it's a hot topic right now, right? Speaking very frankly, right? Yes, they're both flawed men. Yeah, absolutely, 100%, significantly flawed men. And you say, oh, well, who do you pick? I think we started to talk on one episode. What would Jesus do? Which one of these guys would he pick? Well, the reality is probably neither of them. He'd have to be working on both of them significantly.
The last time I checked, and as Christ followers, we're not supposed to not care about politics. But so don't take it that way. But last time I checked, Jesus didn't talk about voting at all. And all of the red letters and things that he said were important. He never said, now here's the thing about the politician. That being said, I believe we are called to look to see, if you are a Christ follower, okay, which of these also broken human beings most closely is supportive of the things that are biblical, because those biblical things lead to a better life. So I think we do have a responsibility to think that way when we vote, but I don't think it's our responsibility to go criticize, chastise, and abuse people who don't think the same way.
No. And there's something to be said for listening and truly hearing. I think when it comes down to truly hearing somebody else's, we don't do enough listening. We want to do a lot of speaking. We want to do a lot of talking. We don't do enough listening to, we listen to rebut. We don't listen to learn. Different perspectives.
Why do you think that is? Let's dig down to the core of that, because
I want to respond to Dara's comment first. She said that is strong. When our behavior is not good, we're not honoring God's nature within us. And I think you said something to that effect earlier. It's like, it's absolutely true. If we were shaped in that manner, we were put here to honor God's nature. So when we don't behave in alignment with that, immediately it's broken. So
Yeah, she also popped in and said, no one ever found Christ by having anger shoved in their face. That goes back to a guy who a lot of churches like to call a heretic.
Gotta accept Jesus.
Yeah, bullhorn guy, right? Like turn or burn. And now flip that script. There's a lot of people that say, listen, there's a lot of people that are, or what does it say? Everybody's an atheist till they're on their deathbed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just heard a story the other night about a guy who was talking about his dad, and I loved hearing the story. He had throat cancer, and he was, was dying.
Sure.
And pastor that they knew was there, and his father did not go to church, did not believe in God, or said he didn't his whole life. And the pastor was talking to him, and he wanted the pastor to come talk to him. He actually had written and asked for it or whatever. And the pastor, who I believe his name was Pastor Bill, asked his dad, he said, "You want my fire insurance? It's free." And his dad was like, "Yep." And his dad was not a believer, right? But in the moment that he was like, "Okay, I'm going to meet my maker," it was like, "Oh, I guess I better decide that I'm on the same team as my maker," right? Now, this is a whole different episode where we could wrestle with what hell really is. But the reason that I asked why you think that is that because you had said two profound things. One really profound thing. You said we act on our beliefs, right? Mm-hmm. That are different than theirs. But the interesting thing is, if we're acting that way, we're not really acting on our core beliefs. We're acting on our political beliefs, but we're putting those above that core belief that we should be acting on, which is, I'm a follower of Jesus, and he says to act this way. So it's like, are we acting on our beliefs? Yeah. And then it kind of makes us question, well, what do we really believe then? If I'm willing to act this way, do I really believe what Jesus told me to? Or so I got a question for you, and I think okay. I think the Bible has an answer that I've got.
Oh, he's got it on the. Do you need to put it on the screen? Here we go.
But my question to you is this: why do you think that that we're willing to step out of our, like, I'm following Jesus and I love people, because even people that don't claim to follow Jesus, that love people, right? I'm a socialist. I love people. Everyone should have food and healthcare, and they should have a free house and get their college loans paid off. All of a sudden, we'll be like, "You should die. You're scum because you're a Republican."
Total script flipped.
Just like people that are in church every Sunday loving Jesus will stand in front of an abortion clinic, which, by the way, I am pro-life and I believe babies' lives matter, right? God knew you before you were in the womb. But those same Christ followers that preach love will stand in front of an abortion clinic and yell at somebody and say, "You're a horrible person. You should die. You're going to go to hell," and berate someone who maybe doesn't even want to be there but got convinced to go there. So we all tend to step out of our beliefs and act like somebody we shouldn't. My question to you is, why do you think we're willing to do that?
You already have an answer on the screen.
Well,
why do I think? I think. What's that?
I think I have an answer, but you tell me why you think we act that way.
I think one of the things is it comes down to human pride. That we want to be in alignment. We think we play pick-a-verse. And we go, well, this is what God said, so I have to, if I'm not in this alignment here, then I must be over here. And so we feel like there's that 100%, it's all or nothing. And I think that goes back, we've brought this up on several shows, at least for me. It goes back to, did God really, when Eve was picking the apple and the snake says that, the devil, in the form of the snake says, "What did he really say that?" And so I think, and we've said this on several shows, I think so you have the combination of stemming from that point, human pride, right? Of going, well, and then for us to justify and say, well, if he did say that, he must have meant it. So it's left up to our interpretation.
Yeah.
So what's your take?
Well, my take is that basically the reason that we behave like that is because we are selfish. And it goes back to what you were just saying from the very beginning of time, right? We think we know what's best for us. And in our world, in our lifetime, we are taught that only we know what's best for us, right? My body, my choice. Don't tell me how to act. Don't tell me how to talk. Don't tell me how to live. We have been taught and convinced, look, nobody knows your body better than you. Nobody knows what you should do in your life better than you. Nobody knows. But I believe that Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, when he gave the Beatitudes, I think he completely proved that wrong. And I'll give you 10 reasons, or 9 reasons, whatever. Nope, 10 reasons why I think we, like Darcy, you do you. That's what people say that. I'll give you 10 reasons here why I think, why I back up what I said about us, saying it's all about us and not about,
Sure.
Reason number 1, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there's more of God and his rule. We don't want to be lesser, right? We don't want to be thought of as, I need someone else to tell me how to live, right?
Well, we were formed in his image.
Yeah.
Right? And so people take that to the extreme.
Bro. And literally, Jesus is saying to this giant crowd that gathered together, he climbed up on a hill so he could speak to all of them. He starts by saying to them, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope, because with less of you, there's more of God in his rule. Meaning, when you've decided, all right, I'm not in control of like, I don't know what this outcome is going to be, you're more willing to go, God, show me the way, right? The next thing he said, you're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. For everybody, that's different. It could be a family member. It could be right now feeling like with politics, like, oh gosh, if candidate A or B wins, my whole life is screwed and they're going to change everything, right? Jesus says you're blessed when you feel like you lost what's most dear to you, because only then can you be embraced by the one, God, most dear to you, right? So when you stop thinking all of these other things are the most important thing in my world, and you go, oh, God first, then God says, I'm here for you. And it's amazing what happens. Third thing, he says, you're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. And that's the moment you find yourself proud owners of everything that can't be bought. Boom. I want to pause on that. We keep counting on or thinking like, oh, a politician's going to make the world better for me, right? Whichever candidate is yours, right? We think that. Or we think, if I just get this job, if I just get this promotion, I'll have this status. If I just get so many followers on Facebook or YouTube.
If I just.
Right? If I just, right? So he says you're blessed when you are content with just who you are. Next one, he said, and this one is strong, you're blessed when you worked up a good appetite for God. The other reason I think that we're willing to step out of our true beliefs and behave like heathens and attack each other and treat each other like crap is because we don't actually have a good appetite for God. We have an appetite for self. We have an appetite to look like the winner when it comes to a situation where our beliefs are. When we believe candidate A is better, we're willing to act like a jerk because we are more interested in having an appetite for ourselves than an appetite for God and his will. The next thing he says, you're blessed when you care. The moment you're being careful, you find yourselves cared for, right? You know how people say like Zig Ziglar said, what up, Arthur Davis? He said, you can get anything in life that you want if you're just willing to help enough other people get what they want. Some people would look at that and go, well, that's selfish. You're just doing that to get from them. No. It's selfish if that's the way you are hearing that. But I'm hearing it like in the Beatitudes. If you care, genuinely care for others, then you're going to find that you're also being cared for. Because when you're selflessly loving others, people will desire to selflessly love you in return, just like we talked about with marriage, right? And Jesus said, and this is interesting, you're blessed when you get your inside world, your heart and mind put right, then you can see God in the outside world. The other reason I think we're so willing to step out of what we know is a right way to behave is because we're not right inside. We're not seeing God in the outside world. We're not looking at that person who voted the other way as God's created child also. And that's a hard thing, right? But we've got to remember that person who disagrees with us was also created in God's image. And so what Jesus, I think, is saying right here is, look, you can't see someone properly as God's creation if on the inside your mind and heart aren't right, if you're not thinking right with God yourself, if you're not pursuing him first, how could you possibly look at someone else and go, oh yeah, that person's also a child of God? The next thing, because there's only two left. The next thing he said, you're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you deeper into God's kingdom. Here's the challenge, though. We aren't being persecuted as Christ followers for being Christ followers. And this is what is driving me nuts. And listen, I'm a conservative, but this is what is making me so frustrated with the conservative people and the conservative right, is that we keep acting like we're being persecuted because we're Christians. And that's not it. You know what? People are getting angry because we're not acting like Christians, right? We're not being persecuted by following Christ. Are we unable to go to church because the COVID stuff's overblown? Yeah, in a lot of places we are. But here's the thing. When Jesus said you're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution, he doesn't say you're blessed when your commitment to Trump provokes persecution. And by the way, I skipped over the one that's verse 9. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate. That's interesting, because are we doing that or are we fighting? And then lastly, he says, not only that, but count yourself blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. Notice he didn't say to discredit you. Like Mike, you and I were talking about something before the show, because people are out there discrediting us, throwing rocks at us, whatever. It sucks, and it does make you angry and hurt. It hurts to me when people say something bad about me, even if it's true, even if it's just like who I used to be. It still hurts because that's who I was, and I don't like being thought of as the turd that I was. But Jesus says, count yourself blessed every time someone people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. And that's the challenge we run into. I think that's the difference between righteous anger and our anger. Is it's righteous to get frustrated when people are trying to discredit God, Jesus and God, right? But we still have to be loving. But it makes sense to go, okay, that frustrates me. But Jesus right here says, count yourself blessed when that happens. He doesn't say when people try and just discredit us. He says
us as humans.
Yeah, and he says, so it says, you're count yourself blessed when people speak lies about him and try and discredit him. It says, what it means is that the truth is too close for comfort and they're uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even, for they don't like it. I do, and all of heaven applauds. You know you're in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten this kind of trouble. Here's the difference. When we, as Christ followers, often read things like this, we put ourselves in the place of God and Jesus, right? Oh, well, this verse says it's okay for me to, when people are persecuting me and tearing me down, and it's like, blah, 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 blah. But it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about God. When people do that, it hurts, and that's okay to acknowledge. But the reality is, I think that those 10 things that we just read through, I think if we could get right with that, if we could look at that as a way of living, we would get along with each other better, even when we don't see things the same. But I also think if we strive to live that way, we would see more things the same.
I absolutely agree with you. I think, one of the difficulties. So let me ask you, because again, we're talking about ourselves, people that are Christians, about Christ followers. You brought this up, so I'll touch on it a little bit.
All right.
We were talking about some conflict, even that I've experienced recently on, social media. I think one of the reasons that drives so deep is it's not about me. It's about my character. And there's an individual that specifically said, well, everything you use this platform for, it implying because I openly share my faith as part of who I am.
Why wouldn't you? That's like somebody who's,
whether it's part of business, there is a consistently blurred line. So to me, it's just like you're saying here, that's an attack on him. And so I end up taking it personally. And so you end up in the position and say, well,
We should high five every time that dude like trolls you and posts crappy stuff. You should just send me a high five on the phone, and we should be like, "Sweet, dude. I'm glad he's attacking you again," because that means obviously the truth is too close.
Well, and that's the thing. The truth that I think that you hit it right there. The truth is too close.
Arthur hit it too. Character and integrity are extremely important. So here's the thing, though, and here's where the accountability comes for us, though, bro. Because biblically, those who do not claim to follow Christ, okay, and this is the two different things, because there are people that are going to see this and go, "Man, I don't believe that Bible stuff." Cool. Well,
last week,
let me just.
It was like, yeah, not true.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The guy that was like, "God's not real," and it's like, why do you say that? And then he bounced. But here's the thing: there are going to be people watching this, and I'll say this to them: like, do you think your life would be better if people got along or didn't get along? I mean, I'll just ask you that: whether you believe in Jesus or not. Would you rather live in a world where people love each other and get along, or people fight and hate each other? That seems like something we could all get behind. And I'll tell you, there's other really cool things that Jesus says too. That's kind of one of them.
Here's the thing: when you ask a question so simply like that, I'm going to shift gears here on you for a second, because you ask a simple question that says, "Okay, would you rather live in a world where people get along or a world where people don't get along?" There's always a but. And
bring the butt.
Well, of course, Matt, I'd want to live in a world where people get along, but as long as they see things that I do, like they have to get along in my methods, right?
But doesn't that go back to what we were just talking about, right? Like, we're establishing methods as a human, so we say we'll get along if you do what I want. Well, biblically, it's like, but this is God's plan. So I'm going, do I want to live my way or God's way? But somebody who doesn't believe is not thinking that same way, right?
Absolutely. So I want to share from Philippians 1, verses 27 through 30. And this will probably spur some thought also, because
Steph had a good comment too, by the way. So we'll address that after you read Philippians.
So I always share, like Matt prefers to share from the Message, and certainly everybody's familiar with NIV and the King James Version. I like to read from this one here, which is the New Living Translation version. It's simple.
Hi, Rodney.
Right? What's up? Yeah. Rodney, Seth, and Wawaya?
Hey. Like, that reminds me of Borat, like, wow.
So Philippians 1, verses 27 through 30 says, live as citizens of heaven. And I'll rip through this quick. It starts with, above all, you must live as citizens of heaven, conducting yourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. Then, whether I come and see you again or only hear about you, I will know that you're standing together with one spirit, one purpose, fighting together for the faith, which is good news. Don't be intimidated in any way by your enemies. This will be a sign to them that they're going to be destroyed, this will be a sign to them that they'll be destroyed, but that you're going to be saved even by God himself. For you have been given not only the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him. We are all in this struggle together. You've seen my struggle in the past, and you know that I am still in the midst of it.
And for those that don't know, like Philippians, like Paul wrote this letter.
Right.
And he goes through quite a bit of struggle. So, matter of fact, for those that don't know, he was killing Christians, and then he got stricken blind, and then Jesus talked to him and gave him back his eyesight. Jesus in the spirit, not like man to man, like hanging out. So Paul went through some pretty crazy struggles. So when he's writing these letters, he's also the same guy that fell a lot, and I think that's important to also share. Like, he literally in some of his letters said, why do I do the things that I hate the things I do? So for those that are like, oh, here's two guys trying to be holier than that,
no, not at all. Not at all. Sharing the wisdom of what we've learned and experienced from our own struggles and failures also,
and from other people's, so that we don't have to go through all the same failures.
Right. There's something to be said from learning from the struggles here in this book, from the struggles that our friends have experienced, and not repeating that. But as it's talking about here, where it's saying the title is "Live as Citizens of Heaven."
Yeah, well,
it reminds me of the simply act as if. Like, here's how you need to behave. There's so many, like you said earlier, Matt, there are so many simple recipes in the Bible for curing disagreements and curing conflict and being able to do this. And at the core, we've shared multiple times, right? This is my commandment: love each other the same way I've loved you. I got to say it this time. You always get to say
yes.
it.
Yes.
So
well, Arthur hit it though, and change starts with the individual. First, we have to actually embrace and believe that that's a better way to live, right? To say, like, it has to start with us believing it. And Seth asked a very, very valuable question. He said, have we commented on personal responsibility to standing up for truth against deception in today's climate? I know the whole comment can't show on the screen, but I think that's a really big one to talk about, because the answer is, Seth, is no, we haven't, but I'll address it right now. And that's this. We do need to call out truth. And there's a way to do it. And Mike and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm heavy. I'm losing weight. I'm loving it. I'm loving that I'm losing weight. Here's the reality. I know I am overweight. Now, Mike Phillips is my friend. Seth, you're my friend. If we're hanging out and you said, dude, I'm concerned about your health, bro. You need to lose some weight. That would mean something. That would be from a spirit of love. If I'm walking down the street and some super fit trainer walks up and goes, bro, you are fat. You need to lose some weight. I can tell you that's the moment where I'm probably going to risk forgetting that Jesus was talking, and he's going to not realize that the fat guy's done combat sports for more than 20 years, because I'm probably going to put him to sleep in a moment, because I'm going to be so wounded by that attack. Not really. I would just probably say, you're a dick, and walk off. And then later be like, I'm sorry, God, I'm not supposed to call people names. So I bring that up because, Seth, here's the deal. There's a way to share truth. When you see something out there that you think is dishonest, I believe what's going on in Michigan is dishonest. I wholeheartedly do. I believe when somebody accidentally added a zero to 12,800 votes, and they accidentally put 128,000, and coincidentally 100% of those were for one candidate. See, you know what? There's a mulligan. Somebody accidentally typed a zero. I would say that might have been a mistake until we just saw a video of a county in Michigan where the computer system accidentally gave 6,000 votes that were for Republican candidate accidentally to the Democrat candidate. And then we find out that 47 counties are using the same software. So, but do I know for sure that there's intentional and nefarious things going on? No. Do I believe there are? Yep. So here, Seth, based on what I read in the Bible and how we're supposed to behave, I think here's the responsible way for us to stand up for truth against deception in today's climate, while also honoring what Jesus commands us to do and loving one another. When you see a piece of information that you believe shows dishonesty, and you question it and you're concerned, I think it's okay to ask the question and share and say, does anybody know any more about this? I'm concerned about this. What do you think? That's different than saying, you're a liar. It's obvious. I can see. Now, that being said, I'm not saying I'm perfect in doing that. I'm just saying that's a way we can do it. When we're having conversations with one another, there's a way to be loving. My wife and I were talking about this last week. I think Jack, the CEO of Twitter, the founder, creator of Twitter, I think he's shady as an oak tree. I watched him in the Senate hearings say that Twitter wants things to be transparent and all this stuff. And then I just watched literal attacks on people tweeted over and over and over on things that were already proven to be lies, and Twitter not banned them. So I said to Dara, because I tweeted, I'm like, Jack, you are a liar. And then I said to her, I think I probably should say, hey, Jack, you just talked about integrity being important. How does that align with what you're allowing? Those are two sentences that come across completely different. Now, Jack probably doesn't care. He doesn't read my tweets because I deleted my Twitter account that had thousands of followers and started over. So he's probably like, oh, this guy with 40 followers. I don't care what he says. But the reality is, the way you stand up for truth is to point out truth and do your best to ask yourself this. Before I say this, is the way I'm saying it honoring how Jesus told me to live? And I'm glad you asked that question, Seth, because I had something pulled up that I wanted to share, which is in Matthew chapter 5, and it's verse starts at verse 21, where it says, "You're familiar with the command of the ancients, don't murder, but I tell you, anyone who so much as angry with a brother or sister is guilty of murder." Carelessly calling a brother an idiot Carelessly call a brother an idiot, you might just find yourself hauled into court. Thoughtlessly yell stupid at a sister, and you're on the brink of hellfire. The simple moral fact is that words kill. So first he says, this is what's not okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Calling people names, insulting them, those matter. And by the way, I'm not saying that I don't fall into this trap, because I do. So I'm just trying to share what I'm reading in the hopes that not only does it change the heart of the person listening to our podcast, but that also changes mine more. But he didn't stop there. After he says, this is what's not okay, he says, this is how I want you to conduct yourself in these matters. If you enter a place of worship and are about to make an offering, suddenly you remember a grudge a friend has against you. Abandon your offering, leave immediately, go to this friend and make things right. Then and only then come back and work things out with God. Or say you're out on the street and an old enemy accosts you, don't lose a minute. Make the first move. Make things right with him. After all, if you leave the first move to him, knowing his track record, you're likely to end up in court, maybe even jail. And if that happens, you won't get out without a stiff fine. Let me just break down what that means today. First, acknowledge the fact that the person who's your enemy is likely not going to be the one to do the right thing. So he didn't say, assume that they're going to do good. So Mike, it's like what we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
We're not going to assume that the guy who likes to insult you and call you out is ever going to do the right thing, right? But it's saying, Mike, take the initiative and reach out and go, I don't know why you have a problem with me. I would like to not have us have a problem. I'd like you to not keep posting stuff about me on social media. If you dislike me, that's on you. But I'm reaching out to you saying, I'd like you to not do it. And the only reason I can say that out loud is because, and I can say their names because I've already made right with these two gentlemen in the past, but John Dawson and Noel Walsh. We had issues a few years ago.
I remember that.
And they were big to the point where, on a very well-watched show, I called them both out by name and just blew up. And for reasons that I believed. I believed those things to be true at the time, but I believe what I did in doing that publicly was inappropriate. But also, here's what really convicted me. Fast forward time, my man Sean Kelly was going to speak at one of our Rockstar events, and we're talking on the phone, and it was the first one he was going to speak at, and he said, and I quote, "I'm excited to speak at this." But I was talking to a buddy of mine who said, I'll pray for you. I think Matt's a good dude, but if you get on the wrong side of him, you're going to be in trouble. Mm-hmm. And I said, I know who that is. It's John Dawson, because I knew when you said, I'll pray for you, right? I was like, I hate when people act one way and then behave another. Now, that was me relating to a bad experience I had with him 3 years prior. But I hadn't interacted with him for that following 3 years or 2 years. And so I didn't know how he is now. I didn't know who he is now. I didn't know what had changed in his life or anything, right? I just assumed the worst about John and just lambasted him and talking to Sean. And I said to Sean, I go, dude, that dude's like this, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't even know me. We haven't even talked in 2 years. He goes, okay, so do you know him then? I'm like, no. I also know.
Why would you say that?
And I felt very convicted, dude. And literally, I happened to be reading something biblically in the Devo Darren and we're doing, and I read the part that I just shared with everybody else. If you even think your mother has a problem with you, and I did the hardest thing I've ever done in the past 5 years. I looked in my phone to see if I had deleted their phone numbers, and I didn't. And I had an issue with Noel too, Chris and I did. And I picked up the phone and I called both of them. John, I got his voicemail, left a message. Noel, I got him on the phone, and he was still upset. He said, I appreciate you calling. What you said not only hurt me and my family, but it also hurt my business. I respect that you called and owned that you shouldn't have been talking bad about me for the last couple of years. I think that's all we got to talk about. And he hung up. Now, mind you, fast forward, he called me about 6 months after that and said, I really appreciated that call. And I want us to be on good terms and get along well. And so it meant a lot to him, and it got a burden off my chest. Mm-hmm. And John called me back and was like, dude, I never expected to hear from you again, let alone what I heard in that voicemail. And we made things right. And then literally he happened to be in Kalamazoo training a client. And I was heading to the gym at 11 o'clock at night. He had just got to town, meets me at the gym. We hang out for an hour and a half. And I bring that up because it is such a hard thing to go to that person who you see as your enemy. And here's the thing. When I look at this, I said, is what happened with them that started the conflict, like, was that okay? No, it wasn't. But here's the reality. You can choose to forgive and move forward. You can choose to forgive and also, say, okay, well, maybe we don't interact in the same ways, right? But the reality is, when I had the problem with those guys, had I been in my Bible, had I followed Jesus' teaching back then, the moment I had an issue with them, had I just pulled them aside and said, hey, this is the problem I got, man. Let's work this out. It wouldn't have escalated to that. And so when we look at what's happening now, like what Arthur says, the media, social media are biased in a bad way. Yeah, they are. So here's the reality, though. Media and social media, the news, all that, while they are the quote-unquote appear the enemy to the conservative, we'll say, the reality is those are human beings on the other side of the camera. We're not going to get to dialogue with them, right?
Sure.
But it's our friends and our family and the people we're connected to on Facebook and LinkedIn and all of our social networks. That's where we actually have opportunity to live the way Jesus told us. And I think we've got to start there. But, well, I think that's step 2. Step 1 is, Mike, we got to look in the mirror and go, do I actually want to live this way? Do I actually believe living this way will give me a better life? Like, and then the heart of that is, do I believe that God's promises that he's got a better life for me if I follow this way?
Well, you said something a moment ago that I think is really profound. Dara brought this up over in the side. She says, oh, so good. To stand up for truth is to point out truth. And, when you're talking about this, and we're talking about, healing and communication, when we brought up the subject of the show and said, look, how do you win with people? How do you overcome disagreements? Keep in mind, there is a difference between your truth, my truth, and absolute truth. True. And for me, the Jesus and the Bible, the teachings of Jesus, that's the absolute truth. That's the North Star, so to speak. And what you said just a minute ago, when you were talking about communicating with these guys, you said, hey, I had to get, in a sense, I'm paraphrasing it, you had to get out of yourself to contact them. And I'm trying to think of the proper way to state this, but one thing that is more powerful and profound than truth is forgiveness. Because forgiveness allows us, true forgiveness, just saying, I forgive you. Mm-hmm. It takes a level of humility. It takes an acceptance that your truth may not be absolute truth. And so that's one of those pieces that it's like, and that doesn't mean you just need to go around forgiving people. Oh, I forgive you, because then you come off as pompous, right?
Well, but then you're the Pope, bro.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when, like, someone has truly wronged you. You have a decision to make. You can hold on to that, or you can forgive and move on from that. And so it's,
stuff.
What's that?
I like how you rhyme stuff. You can hold on to that, or you can move on from that. You are like a Pentecostal preacher without the snakes and the music in the background.
This is the stuff that goes through my head. Sometimes the thing is, every once in a while, I'll get a perfect alignment of one of those thoughts. And then the other 45 minutes, it's like over here, it's firing all over the place. People are like, where the heck is this guy going? I have no idea. And I'm like, I'm here. No, I'm over here. And then like at the end of the show, it's like, oh, hey.
That's why all between 5 and 9 people every week love watching.
Absolutely.
Because of that.
So I just
don't like is how this chair, the way it goes out, like as I'm trying to get slimmer, like it makes it look like I go down like a 10. It's just bothering me right now. Does this help? I'm focused on me. I look at the camera and I'm like, man, the way that chair makes me look even bigger, and I hate it. So I'm just gonna lean I'm gonna Joe Rogan it. I need to like big headphones. Have
the lean.
I need the news reader things on your ear. Seth said, I appreciate your response and being healthy in the way you bring light to truth and only after confirming it. I think the part that's been harder to understand is, as a Christian in America, we have civic duties that sometimes require citizens to act and make judgment calls as we recognize our rights are endowed by our Creator. That's a good point. Originally, the Constitution was created, right, to protect the rights, the God-given rights we have, which is freedom of religion, right? Or sorry, is the freedom to own land, right, and the freedom to like make a living, right? Those are God things, right? We're alive, we can have life. Let's see, codified into law. Maintained and upheld by the citizens. In personal relationships and among believers especially, we have no excuse to be uncivilized. But when we try to overlay this paradigm into the procedure of law in a country where all authority of government is from, of, and for the people, the biblical advice of lawful Christian conduct of times under Roman rule where power is top down. Also, I believe there's your option of truth and my option of truth, but not one truth. Yeah, like what Mike was saying, like your truth, my truth, and the truth. The option of the truth, but only the truth. Okay. Your option of the truth and my option of the truth, but only one truth, not your truth, my truth, and the truth. Yeah. So, yeah. And that's what Mike's saying when he says your truth, my truth. Doesn't mean, because a lot of people go, this is my truth. I'm living my truth. No. It's kind of like Pastor Lee at Radiant said before Seth. He said, sometimes your truth is actually the devil's lie, right? That we're living in, where we believe this is my truth, but no, that's just a lie that we're living. Here's what I'll say, Seth. While everything you were saying, right, it was codified into law, which was based on biblical things. Since you bring up Rome, I'm going to bring it up. Look at Jesus in Rome. If we were just, and I love you, bro, so I'm so glad you brought that up, Seth. And you and I talked about this the last day that we hung out after we went shooting guns, actually. A little bit we talked about this. But when we look at Jesus in Rome, there was massive oppression going on. The Jewish people were considered lower than low, right? If a Roman soldier told them they had to carry their gear a mile, they had to. Nothing we read in the scripture shows Jesus saying, hey, we need to rise up against Rome because they're taking away our rights. Everything that I can see in scripture says Jesus is going, there's something bigger than this world we're living in. So here's how I want you guys to live. And here's the tough part, Seth, because the reality is when we're losing our rights, it hurts and it sucks, right? When we're told you don't have the freedom to do this, or person on the left can call you a racist or say that you must be inherently racist because you're a white male. Things like that hurt, especially when you're not, right? Especially like it's just period. And when it's just like when somebody who was white says to someone of color that they're less than or whatever, like it hurts. These are real things that go on in the world. People mistreat people. When we say the government, we have to remember that's all people. Those are all people making choices, right? Some good, some bad. But the reality is when we look at what Jesus did, man, the Romans were crucifying people in public. They were beating people. They were killing people. And never once did Jesus say, it's time to stand up, get your guns out, and fight for what the Constitution said. And before you say the Constitution wasn't written then, the Constitution was supposed to be based on the stuff that we're taught in the Bible.
Absolutely.
Jesus, when Peter whacked a guy's ear off that was coming to crucify Jesus, hang him on a cross after beating and tearing his flesh, right? That was all going to happen. And Peter whacks the guy's ear off, and Jesus says, stop it, and puts the ear back on. So this is the hard part, Seth, because I'll tell you right now, we have guns in our home. I would not let someone come in and hurt my family. I would protect them with my life. I love them, and I would. But that doesn't mean I'd feel good about doing it, even though it's my right. I think we have to look at, am I trying to live by the Constitution, or am I trying to live by what Jesus taught? The Constitution is supposed to emphasize us living the way that God intended. It is not for us to go try and reshape God's word based on the Constitution. That's real talk, Seth. That's how I view it, bro. And I think while the Constitution is supposed to be the truth of our rights in America, I believe that the reality is the Bible is the truth about how we're supposed to live in the world, period. 100%. And the Bible surely doesn't talk about America. It talks about people and the way people are supposed to live toward God, toward people.
Towards
so
others.
You, my brother, have to choose What's most important to you, Seth? Following the Constitution or following Jesus? If we're following Jesus, I think we have to understand we could get screwed by the people that in the government. We could get screwed with our rights. We can lose them. We can be persecuted.
You brought up Romans, and there's a perfect segue here when we're talking about Romans. It's chapter 14, verses 10 through 12. Romans is obviously, it's an orderly book in the Bible, has a lot to do kind of with what we're talking about, what you're talking about right now. Hey, you can get screwed by the government, written by the Apostle Paul, so giving people some context. I like in my Bible here, it says, the perspective, what's the real score with God? Where do you and I stand? And so when we're talking about, it's what's the score with God, not what's the score with the government, right? And so this specific set of verses reads, it says, so why do you condemn another believer? Why do you look down on another believer? Remember, we'll all stand before the judgment seat of God. For the scriptures say, as surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bend to me and every tongue will declare allegiance to God. Yes, each of us will give a personal account to God. See, if we thought more about our situation before the judgment of the throne of God, we'd be less likely to pass judgment on other people, right? If we thought more about, hey, this is where I'm going to be judged, I'm not going to pass judgment on you because I've got my own judge coming. And the reality is, when that day comes, we're going to spend enough time answering for our own life. We don't need to spend our short time here passing judgment and involving ourselves in the matters of other people.
Oh, so true.
So we, in any of these matters, because we're talking about tonight and we're kind of winding down to a close. It's like in any of these matters where people disagree, good people disagree with other good people. Christians disagree with other Christians, right? What we need to do is
people on both sides. Oh, wait, don't say that.
Absolutely.
Don't say
there's
it that
good
way.
people. And guess what? There's bad people on both sides too.
Thank you.
And
I think it goes back to the masterful words of Danny Goki, former American Idol contender. In that
How do I
song
remember that name?
Played all over Christian radio. Love God and love people. That guy. But it does go back. Really, those aren't Danny Goki's words. Those are Jesus. But when we talk, and I thank you, Seth, again. I love that he asked that question.
Absolutely.
I know Seth. I know where he stands in that. I do not want to lose the God-given rights that are protected under the Constitution, to be clear. That being said, I don't expect this world to be for me. I don't. But I know this. When Jesus was asked what's the most important of all the commands, Mike, what did he say? You know, I know. What did he say?
Love each other the same way I loved you.
Right.
Love people. Love God. Yeah. Sorry, I don't say it the same way that you do.
Well, I mean, he said, look,
love God, love people.
God with all your heart, soul, and mind and strength, and love others as yourself. So Jesus said, first things first, love God. That will shape how we live. And then how we live will be to love others. You want to avoid conflict, that's the simple recipe. And we basically touch it every single week. And then I go into my week and I forget it halfway through the week, if I'm being honest. I just do. I don't forget it. You know what it is? I start thinking that my way is more important than God's way. And I think we could all do well. Seth said, it's why I love our Constitution, because we don't have a conflict between law or God. We have freedom of choice by God's design. And our Michigan State Constitution literally states recognize our creator and now that's right. So if we claim that our representatives are in power, we forfeit our responsibilities. I'm not worried about losing rights, especially from God that man can't take away, or worried about government overreach. It's well-intended Christians to forgo their responsibilities. Yeah, that's true. I mean, here's the reality, man. We can't expect anything out of the world. You know what we can expect? God said we are forgiven thanks to the blood of Jesus, and so we get eternity with him. So that's an expectation we can have because it's a truth that God gave us. And the other thing that he did was said that if we give, right, if you tithe, and it's actually, I think, the only verse in the Bible where God says, test me in this, because Jesus said in other states, don't test God. But God said, test me in this, and I will give you back in abundance, right? So the realities are this. The Constitution is important to me, but not as important as the Bible. The Constitution is shaped from the Bible, not the other way around. If the lawgivers that we have voted into power do not follow what the Bible says, it's sad, but I don't actually expect them to, because we all know that this world fell a long time ago. Doesn't mean we shouldn't care, but I think it means we need to pray even harder, and we need to show even more love, because biblically it says, be a fool, right? Be a fool for Jesus. So the reality is, for Christians, if we're not out there, like, we have guns, whatever, but if we're not out there strapped in Kevlar saying, oh, the Constitution, if we instead go, you know what, this is sad what's happening, I'm going to pray for these people. I'm going to love these people. I'm going to show love. And when they're out there spitting at me because I have an American flag on a shirt, I'm going to look like a fool to the rest of the world, going, I'm so sorry that you have that much hate in your heart.
Pray for your enemies.
If I can actually do that. So, I will look like a fool to the world, but you know who I won't look like a fool to? God, Jesus, who told me to behave better than the world, right? Be in the world, not of the world. So there you go.
On that note,
we're
be in the world, not of the world.
Hey, on that note, can I just tell people to go read Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 14, because this literally tells us how to live. Like, it is a great, the message, of course, I love the wording, but Colossians 3, verses 12 through 14. You guys go look it up. You have the interweb. I'm not going to read it to you. Look it up if you actually care. There you go.
And with that, thank you, everybody, for joining us for another Friday Night Fire. Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate you, man. You rock. You're always a rock star. And we're going to try to take it out. Oh, that's crazy. You guys should have seen beforehand. It was wild.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody. And we will see you back here same time. Hey, share the show. If you got something out of this, share. Subscribe to both of our channels or one of our channels. Connect on Facebook. And we'll see you back here next week.
High five. Great success. Wah, wah, wee, wah.